So this guy had a good conversation with me initially, and then he blocked me towards the end of it. I don't know why. We weren't insulting each other. I'm guessing it might have something to do with the fact that I said I was going to include this conversation in my next video. But anyway, he says, well, this video just introduced me to someone new to follow, opposite of their intention, lol. How does this person think talking about racism at a systemic level is going to happen if you don't ask those kinds of questions? And I said, I am open to debate with people so long as they are constructive on my channel. I have yet to have anyone successfully explain to me how systemic racism is not simply systemic classism. I grew up in poor, crime-ridden areas. There is no special rescue operations for white kids. This is the point that I make all the time, is that if this was really about race, there would be some effort to save poor white kids, and there isn't. Once you're identified as white trash, your race is irrelevant to them. I mean, it's like, that's the point I've tried to make from the beginning. The elite don't care about your race. They care about your dollars. If you become wealthy, then you're on their team. So then he says, basically the proportions and various problems don't line up to be wholly explained by class. Plus, there's certain things like accepted hairstyles, language, etc. that affects things like job opportunities, so not just skin color, but also culture propagates into discrimination. So I actually responded to this, but unfortunately I'm not going to be able to pull all of my comments up because he blocked me. But let me go through what I said from my memory. First of all, when you say like accepted hairstyles and language, the hairstyle thing, it depends on what you're doing. You know, like I had long hair at one point and, you know, that caused problems for me in job interviews, and that was as a white guy. But also when you say things like language, this is that like new like concept of, oh, well, you know, if you don't accept their language, then you're racist. And they kind of indicate that this only applies to black people, you know, who speak with what is now, I guess, called African American vernacular or Ebonics. But if you're a hillbilly hick who can't speak, you know, English, that's going to cause problems for you during your interviews as well. You know, and the issue really is that it's about, can you communicate effectively is what affects somebody in that situation. You know, are they going to be able to understand you as their employee? You know, honestly, I do feel that this is probably given too much weight, but at the same time, it's not just a racial issue. So anyway, you know, and then, but also culture propagates into discrimination. Well, yeah, that's exactly what's going on right now. The leftist culture is propagating discrimination against people who are white. So I gave the point, I watched as the Occupy movement went from being a powerful force for the poor against the wealthy into splintering and becoming nothing. And this was because of CRT, anti-racism, gender studies, the entire woke movement divided and conquered Occupy. To which he said, I'd argue Occupy lacked principle. In the US, you're going to need a multiracial coalition to win, and frankly, I care about too many people of color to work for anything other than a multiracial coalition. A Marxist analysis of the U.S. can't avoid race, and a non-Marxist one has no teeth. So first of all, you know, this kind of like centers on the issue that I keep pointing out, that, you know, the people who are involved in the critical race theory stuff are all Marxists. And they're trying to go out of their way to say that they're not. And I don't hate all Marxists, but unfortunately, the ideology that comes along with this is not necessarily going to be constructive, even from a leftist perspective. I've done other videos on that topic, but regardless, it's not that Occupy lacked principle. I have no idea what the hell that's about. And one of the things I said in the response that I won't be able to grab is that Occupy didn't lack principles at all. It started off as this beautiful, like powerful, like totally seamless group of human beings working together. That's what it felt like. You know, when I was doing things at Occupy, you know, there were people from different races, different cultures, different, you know, people who would have never even met or interacted with each other. We're all unified towards one purpose. Then the critical race theory and woke stuff showed up, and everything it went from one unified tribe into a bunch of divided, smaller, squabbling, arguing tribes. And that's by design. This shit is designed to divide and conquer us, to make us ineffective, and that's exactly what it does. And I said, we are not going to agree on Marxism. Identity politics is literally at the core of why the USSR failed. It is also at the core of why China is an authoritarian regime. I'm a Nordic model democratic socialist like Bernie Sanders. And it is at the core. The reason that the USSR had famines was because the identity politics in the situation identified all of the wealthy farmers as the evil class and killed them. So then nobody in the USSR understood how to engage in, agriculture. Massive agriculture that like is going to feed thousands of people. It requires like a college education to understand how, and when to plant crops. And if you kill everybody who knows how to do that, then you're going to kill a lot of people when the famines arise. And the unfortunate part about this is that this means that if you even start talking about, let's work together, let's pool resources, then we conjure up these images of people dying in famines. And the famines were caused by the identity politics. Something ironically very similar is going on in South Africa, because they ran off and murdered some of the farmers because they were white. And then there were famines because nobody left understood how to engage in massive agriculture. And now, ironically, some of these African countries are trying to find these farmers and beg them to come back. It's not that black people can't learn agriculture, obviously, but, you can't just, run everybody off and assume that you're going to be able to make the land productive. And they targeted those people for being white landowners. And I'm not saying that South Africa was not colonized, it obviously was. But you have to understand the implications and the consequences of what you're doing. It would have been better to figure out a way to work together with those people, to come together as a united South Africa and make life better for everybody there. Instead, identity politics are dividing and conquering Africa even further and getting a hell of a lot more people killed. Anyway, so he says, so a toothless social democrat, we call them social fascists. I don't know who we are, but whatever. But that's a bit too confrontational. You think? I would suggest looking into the Marxist framework. It is very useful for understanding reality, even if you don't want to take its prescriptive approaches, such as Marxism, Leninism. What the fuck is a social fascist? I'm a fascist because I advocate for the way that countries like Denmark, Finland, etc. govern themselves? That makes me a fascist. This is an example of the, and he says it's confrontational because it is. This is idiotic. Like, why would you make such a distinction? You're either with us or you're with the terrorists, like George Bush would say, right? There's no logic or sense to any of this. We've now gotten to the point where we're just labeling anybody a fascist, who doesn't agree with any small part of what we want to do. So apparently now this means Bernie Sanders is also a fascist. Are you fucking kidding me? Which is ironic considering Sabby's, got a Bernie sign in the beginning of her video. Anyway, no, I'm not looking into the Marxist framework. I do not believe that identity politics is a positive. I believe that we have to dissolve identity politics and unify as a people to come together, and that's the only way any form of collective can work together. Period. And history has proven this. And I said, confrontational doesn't work, which is also why the current methods of racial activism are not working. The idea of calling me a fascist just because I don't agree with Marxism is a conversation ender. You are not going to recruit anyone who is not already on board with that. And then I said I will include this next video, in my next video. And I did want to make one more reply to him. When you call them toothless, but the reality is this. Bernie is a lifelong U.S. senator who made 2 very powerful runs for president. No Marxist party has done anything in this country. The Green Party ran one and got 0.2% of the vote. Tiny, sharp teeth, I guess? It's like, so if Bernie's the toothless, social democrat, and communism is the toothful, version, then what are they then? Like, a little fucking, like, tiny dog that's trying to nip at your ankles? Because that's what 0.2% of the vote looks like. And when they ran Howie Hawkins, we told them that this is what was going to happen, and that's exactly what happened. Any possibility of the Green Party being able to capture any of the momentum for Bernie Sanders ended when they ran an obscure communist that nobody gave a shit about.